All right. So, welcome to the second session of the Rebbe Book Club, Rebbe by Rabbi Joseph Telushkin. We have a couple more faces here, some new faces. So let's start by introducing maybe Selena, because this is your first time. You just share what enticed you to join when you saw us share about it, and maybe did you have any connection to the Lubavitcher Rebbe before, or was it more like you wanted to learn more in the process of joining?
Right, and I'm sorry I missed last 2 weeks ago. I really wanted to be there, but I had a due date. So yeah, I guess I think I started following the podcast, like you and the podcast, pretty much when I think I must have found you through Rabbi Shlomo Litvin's rooms, because I've been attending his rooms and Rabbi Ronnie Fine's Tanya rooms. And I guess, yeah, I want to know more because I started my journey in learning about Judaism and mysticism by doing research last semester, my grad program. I'm a religious studies student. And so I just, I just started having some personal connections to the material. And then I just decided to look into my family history, and it turned out that 3 out of 4 of my grandparents are Jewish last name. So that was a shock because I never thought to look into it. So I've been kind of on a journey ever since like last May, probably about the 3 or 4 months of just understanding and learning. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but in academia, even Jewish historians are not always friendly to sort of any kind of versions of mysticism. And so it's hard to find good material that is, either neutral or a positive about it. So,
well, awesome. Whatever we can do to help you come closer to your identity in the process, that's awesome. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, the book's great so far.
Yeah, right. So I have some notes here. So yeah. Again, I want to give you the floor real quick so you can maybe introduce yourself and your connection to the book and maybe some of the story behind what led to the...
Sure. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining. So like Mayor said, my name is Jake Zebede. I am his brother-in-law. But before I was his brother-in-law, in what seems like a past life, I was an editor at HarperCollins, where I published several nonfiction books, and one of the books I had an opportunity to publish and work on was this book, Rebbe by Joseph Telushkin. It kind of fell into my lap. My boss at the time, it was one of my first jobs at a school. My boss at the time was Catholic Italian, and she got this manuscript on her desk, and she was like, "Jake, you're Jewish, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess, And she says, "Have you ever heard of this Rebbe character? I mean, they say that he's like an important figure. This agent sent it to me, whatever." And I looked at it and I said, "Of course, yeah, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whatever." So that's basically how I became the editor, because I was like the Jewish guy at the company. It ended up being like a totally transformative experience.
And the connection to the author?
Yeah, and the connection to the author. So I can, if we all have time, like 5 minutes for a little bit of a long story, which is a story that totally changed my life forever. So prior to that at HarperCollins, I was like a sophomore in school at NYU. And so like 4 years before, it was at a time in my life when I really didn't believe in anything having to do with religion. I was pretty much agnostic / atheist. And my mother, like any good Jewish mother, was worried. She's, so she would send me things to read and classes to take and whatever, and I would just brush it off. So one day she says to me, Jake, there's a really amazing author going to speak at NYU. You have to see him. I said, cool. What's it about? Oh, well, it's this book called Hillel, and the author is Joseph Telushkin. I said, Mom, if the guy has a rabbi in front of his title, like, I'm not interested in hearing him speak, and I'll never go. But she didn't let up. She's very persistent. So every couple of days leading up to the speech, it was a book signing. She said, you should really go. You should really go. I said, no, I am not going. I'm not going. I have plans that night. I'm not going. So fast forward, I think it was like a Thursday. My plans had fallen through. I was sitting on my couch. I knew I was going to see my mom in a couple of weeks in Miami, flying back home. And I said, I'm going to surprise her because I'm not doing anything. I might as well. So I went to hear him speak. It was interesting, I don't even remember what he said, but I remember thinking, okay, like this guy seems like pretty smart. And, so I bought a copy of his book, and I had him sign in the front flap, Dear Chaya, who's my mom, don't worry about your son, Jake. That was what he signed the book. Okay. And then close the book. 2 weeks later, I'm in Miami. I hand it to my mom. She's bursting in tears. She was so happy. She was like, you made my day. It was as if I had given her like 3 grandchildren on the spot. Like that was her level of joy. And fast forward was like 4 years. I'm at HarperCollins, and I couldn't believe I'm sitting with me, my boss, and then the book agent and Joseph Telushkin. It was like the craziest thing. I'd never really read any, Jewish authors or anything, but I was able to speak intelligently about him and about his book Hillel and his other books because I knew who he was. And so anyway, it was between us at HarperCollins and Little Brown. We won the assignment, and then that started a relationship with Joseph Telushkin that we were working on the book together for like 18 months.
The Rebbe.
The Rebbe book. We published it. It was an instant New York Times bestseller. And then we still continue to be friends.
And then
today,
the other part where, so his mom, now Jake has become more observant over time, come closer to his Judaism. And his mom has gone further away. And so when the book came out, what happened?
Right. When the book came out, I didn't tell Joseph the story about my mom until we published the book. It was a New York Times bestseller, and I thought, like, this is the perfect time to bring this up. So I brought him a copy of the Hillel book that says that was signed to my mom, and he couldn't believe it. He like almost fell out of his chair, and he said, okay, well, now I'm gonna write something else. So he goes to the back page in the book, and he says, Dear Jake, don't worry about your mom Chaya. And he's closed the book, and we still have it on our bookshelf somewhere.
And then to make the story even better, I think I mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago. But the book that sort of was like my personal like eye opener for all of this, and that I've always loved Jewish history, has always been like a passion. But what really made it like click for me was another one of Rabbi Telushkin's books called Jewish Literacy, which is like, I have it here. It's basically like a short encyclopedia with short entries of like everything in Jewish history and Jewish customs. And I sat a Shavuot 2.5 years ago, almost 3. I sat like all night, like usually learn on Shavuot. I sat all night reading that book, and I read like the entire like history part of it. And I was like, wow, like I couldn't believe I could read that much to begin with. And that was sort of like the seed that then eventually led to On This Day in Jewish history, that eventually led to the 2 Tall Jews, that eventually led to this moment. So, and awesome. Rabbi Telushkin was also the one who married.
Yeah, he married my wife and I, his sister.
Hopefully we can get him on one of these sessions in the future. That's the goal. I think that we can probably make it happen. No promises, bli neder, right? Right before Rosh Hashanah, we're not going to make any new promises. And if we are, we're going to know them very soon, but we'll try. And yeah, does anybody have any questions for Jake? Isaac?
Yeah.
What's up, Isaac?
Hey, how's it going? So during those 18 months, did you have like a specific role? That is, like, did you have like daily or like just like regular correspondence with him? Was it like a chapter by chapter thing, or was it what was that?
Yeah, totally. It was a similar process to many of the books I edited, where basically you start with the table of contents and the global, like, what is this book going to be? He had already written a lot. It was almost twice as long. And it hadn't been organized. So a lot of it was like, what is this book about? How do we want to organize the chapters, etc. And then once we created the framework and the structure, he would write a chapter and I'd read the chapter and I'd say, I just basically give my personal opinion on, hey, I like this story, or the story was repetitive, or I think you already mentioned this in chapter 3. And like that, just back and forth.
It's interesting because one of the things that stood out to me is the structure of the book and how like it is organized in a way, not like I've read a lot of different biographies, and it's not like a lot of different biographies where it's like, okay, this is what happened between years 1950 and 1960. This is what happened. It was not, It's like everything's sort of happening at the same time. It's this like holistic approach to his life.
Yeah. We did that intentionally, where we wanted the book to be organized by his teachings rather than by a specific time period. And then for the people who really like to read things in chronological order, in the back of the book, there's like we call the biography that's meant to be read, or a timeline that's meant to be read. It's like 50 pages or so of just, from the moment he's born till the moment he dies.
Oh, amazing.
Cool. Oh, Matthew has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that actually what you're saying? Like when you say, when you would say you already mentioned the story in chapter 3, is that why there's a lot of see page 250 and it's like the same story from a different perspective type thing?
Yeah, a lot of times in books, especially in biographies, you'll reference something that happened in a previous chapter if you wanted to like dig in. So to answer your question, this book was designed so that you didn't necessarily have to read it from left to right or right to left if it's in Hebrew, but like depending on your mood that day, like many of Joseph Telushkin's books, you open the table of contents and you say, you know what, I want to read about the Rebbe's position on the state of Israel, or I want to read about his politics, how, whatever it is, you can skip around and it would still make sense. Kind of like an episode of Seinfeld, you can watch like season 5, episode 3, and you would still get it. You wouldn't have to watch all the way up to season 5.
I'm sure the Rebbe would love that analogy. Does anybody have any other questions?
I'm curious. I'm Marla, by the way.
Hey, Marla.
Do you have a favorite story that either did or didn't make the cut?
Nothing that, I tell people that it was like longer before, but like really all the same stories are there.
It was just repetitive.
Yeah, or like longer than it had to be or whatever. I think that all the best stories are in there. Yeah.
Cool.
Do you think the Rebbe would have liked the book?
That's a good question.
I think so.
Start a podcast then.
I think based on the fact that so many people with God's help have read the book, I think he would have liked it. Not because it's about him, because he really was a humble person, but just because of the teachings that it espouses and how many people I personally know have been affected by it, including me. So I think that's what he cared about.
Agreed.
Cool.
Cool. So just to give you a little context, we are going in order, chronological order. Although it's interesting to see that we can jump around. And for this session, we all, for the most part, read part 3, and it was about the 7 virtues. And so I just wanted to open it up for discussion. Anybody can jump in of like which of the 7 virtues or which story of within each of the virtues stood out the most to you. I have a couple. I can just share one real quick. The one note for chapter 10, anything worth doing is worth doing now. I think it's super relevant today with the amount of distractions that we have. Everyone's multitasking, or at least pretending to multitask. And sometimes you work so much on too many things that you actually end up doing nothing. And I know I felt it before. You try to balance all these different things, and the importance of like finishing that thing that you're doing now. With there's an overlap between I'm also tired, so what chapter, so the Rebbe's work ethic, and anything worth doing is worth doing now. I think there was a little bit of an overlap there of like it's important to do a lot of these things now if it's important, and then also not doing things just because there's a lot to do. And how people would talk about his work ethic and ask him how many hours he slept, and be like, I don't know, like I don't know how much he sleeps. And like honestly, people didn't know how much he actually slept. And or people would complain to him like, I have too much going on, and his response would be like, okay, so do more. But at the same time, like not overworking yourself, but also not underworking yourself, because then you wouldn't do enough. And it was all in the aspect of like, if you can do that one thing that might actually change the scale to bring about the redemption, why not? And so that really stood out to me. And yeah.
Wow, it's really nice to revisit this book because it's been years for me. I was 24, right. It's been almost 8 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
I thought of a question for you. It's not too late.
No.
Do you remember any moments that are like, that stand out to you while you were working on the project that maybe, I don't know, were there moments where like the intellectual part of the job shifted into something that was more, that you could say it was more of like spiritual or something that was bigger than yourself? Like, yeah, do you remember it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, totally. I'll give you an example. So one, being the editor for this book had like other privileges where it wasn't just like, okay, here's like some words and you're going to read it. It's like, no, we want to bring you to 70. So we want to bring you to 770 so you can understand what this is all about. We want to bring you to a kindergarten. I was at 770 during Bereshit, and the reading of Bereshit, and it was the first parsha. And there was also like groups visiting from Israel, and I remember being like a sardine packed in a can. I mean, it was so full. It was like triple the fire code for sure. Like it was so. We would do the Shmoneh Esrei, and 3 steps back, people were literally falling. Like, it was amazing. Thankfully, no one was injured. But it was such an experience. And people. So one of the, to answer your question, remember at this time I really wasn't like religious or really spiritual at all. I went to a kinnis dinner in Brooklyn. I don't know if you all know what that is, but it's basically all the shluchim, all of the rabbis from Chabad all over the world. There's about 3,000 of them. They all descend upon Brooklyn. And they rent out this huge rec hall. It's like a stadium. And they do l'chaims and
like a convention.
Yeah. It's the Chabad convention. They do it once a year. Everybody comes. So I went to this dinner. I was like, wow. I mean, there's so many people here. And who do I see there is Rabbi Shalom Lipskar of the Shul of Bar Harbor, which is the synagogue that I went to growing up. And it's where I had my bar mitzvah. And he he was an important figure like in my family and in my Jewish upbringing, but obviously, you know, he did not expect to see me at this dinner. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And he was doubly surprised when I responded to him, "Well, I'm the editor of this book called Rebbe with Joseph Telushkin," and he, you know, he's like, "Okay," like he kind of didn't believe it. You want some water?
The water is the reason that I'm calling.
So
Hold the mic.
So being the wise rabbi that he is, he said to me, he said, "Jake, do me a favor. We've known each other a long time." I said, "Of course." He says, "When you're editing this book, can you please wrap your tefillin each day? Do it for me, like without shame." Like he really, like, can you imagine someone asking you, like, can you do something every single day for 10 minutes? Like it's not something like you ask of someone, but he asked it without any shame, which I would later come to find, you know, editing the book, why they want you to wrap your tefillin every day if you're a man. But in the spot, you know, I was there. I was with the representative from Chabad. I was with the Joseph, the author, and everyone was kind of there. And I was like, "For you, Rabbi, I'll do it." Not really knowing what I was getting myself into, just the commitment to wrap tefillin every day.
Right. I figured I would hear it in the editing.
And since that time, I pretty much wrap tefillin every day except for Saturdays and Yom Tovs.
Isaac has his own tefillin story.
Yeah. I thought we were recording the podcast with Rabbi Lippman, and I said I didn't have a pair, and he calls up someone, and someone shows up to my apartment thinking I just needed a pair to put on, and I thought I was getting a pair. So I put on his pair in my stairwell, and he takes a photo. He's like, "Can I take a photo?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And then I'm like, "All right, great." You know, I performed the mitzvah. And this was, he showed up after the podcast ended.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of another interview.
Oh yeah, the middle of another interview. It was back to back.
Knock, knock.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so it was sort of a misunderstanding, but it was a blessing in disguise. Anyway, long story short, I got a pair through my Chabad rabbi at UMass, and now put it on every day, 6 days a week. So it's nice.
Awesome. I think the Rebbe was very wise in the sense that he had a shluchim. If you ever like go to New York City, you guys had this experience where they ask, "Are you Jewish?" To the women,
Yeah.
"Well, here's some Shabbat candles for this Friday." To the men, "Well, we're gonna wrap tefillin, please," whatever. They're like the best salesmen
Yeah.
in the history. And I think the Rebbe was wise to make that a priority, and it's very telling because who is the Greek philosopher? Who said Aristotle that you are the sum of what you do every day, basically. You're the sum of your habits.
I'm not sure if it was Aristotle.
I'm butchering the quote, but I think he knew that if you bind something physically, you know, for 10 minutes a day, every single day, like you will always be aware of your Jewishness.
And then for women,
lighting candles, Friday night, you know, even that's repetition too, once a week.
It's also the ripple effects.
Yeah.
So there were two examples that stood out to me, from this week's section of wanting to go out of their way. To the guy who met a Jew in Detroit, and who, right, he got him his tefillin, and he's like, "Okay, so then you're gonna wait 6 weeks to get him his tefillin, so then he's not gonna put them on. Go now." And this is in New York. So he went to go buy the tefillin, higher price, got on a flight, went to Detroit, gave him his tefillin, or sorry, he sent him the tefillin, and the guy started putting them on because he saw the urgency of like, wow, he actually came through like immediately. And then the girl in Baltimore or Maryland who wanted to light candles, and the Rebbe there was 2 hours before Shabbat, and the Rebbe noticed that there were 2 hours before Shabbat. Oh, so there's an opportunity for her to light candles. She lit candles. Her mom started lighting candles, and then like 40 girls around her started lighting candles because of her. Wow. So like the ripple effects of what this one action does is, you know, sometimes you never find out, but it's incredible.
Totally. Speaking about ripple effects, my mom encouraging me to be in touch with my Judaism, and then we could get into many levels and things that came, but basically this whole book was a huge genesis for me rediscovering my Judaism. I say this to Tanya all the time, your sister, like if I hadn't had this experience of working on this book, I mean, she was like she still is, very, very like as Jewish as Mayor is. So like if I had just shown up like some atheist, agnostic, whatever, I don't think she would have been very interested.
Well, you were in the process.
But I was very much in the process because of this book. And I think she saw that. And now we have 2 kids.
Right.
So.
And we're talking about it. Does anybody want to share something that stood out to them about this, one of the virtues, or an example, one of the stories?
Yeah. In the love your neighbor section, there were 2 really welcoming anecdotes in chapter 5 that really illuminated the Rebbe's both like his acute sense of the world and just his astute observations that he would make, and how the ways in which his actions would follow. So the section where a rabbi gets permission to take a group of prisoners, convicted felons, out of the prison, and they bring them to 770, and the rabbi was going to sit all of them at the same table, and all these prisoners look noticeably different from the rest of the rabbis and the rest of the regulars at 770. And the Rebbe said, no, don't call attention. We don't want to embarrass them. Let's sprinkle them amongst everyone there. And I'm like, that's so brilliant. Like, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And, when it was a poor couple who couldn't afford the live music following the ceremony, and he was in his office and he didn't hear the music, and he insisted, and he paid for it, and they never knew who paid for it. Just the anonymity of that virtue, I thought was really powerful.
Totally. Not so anonymous now, huh?
No.
Doxed him.
They doxed him. But yeah, he had such one of the anecdotes that stuck out to me. I always remember he was such a gentle soul that like a fly would enter the room and he wouldn't ever try to kill it. He would just kind of like whoosh it away. Spoiler
alert.
Even spoiler alert, you haven't read that? Whatever. He was such a gentle soul, he treated all of God's creatures, especially human beings, but
mm-hmm.
all of creation as something marvelous. And if there's a fly, it's because God wanted it there,
Right.
In the creating fearlessness, creating leaders section, the part about wine reb, that I had a vocal outburst when I read that, when he was talking to, it's on page 102.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Rebbe says, tell him that there is a Jew who lives in Maryland that he can speak to, his name is Wine Reb.
Yeah.
And Wine Reb is calling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so and of course the way Telushkin writes that anecdote leaves the reader with to believe that it's just as much the Rebbe's potentially supernatural ability as it is this beautiful coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought he towed the line between hagiography and reality really well. Like he kind of left it up to the reader, like, hey, here's the story. Is it a coincidence? Is it supernatural? And I think he lets you draw your own conclusions. There are a lot of books out there that are like, he split the water,
mm-hmm.
not literally, but I thought he did that very well, and I personally saw him conduct many interviews, and he attributes them all in at the end of the book. This book was like exceptionally well researched. His office was literally 4 walls of books, many of them having to do with the Rebbe, recordings of all of his speeches, of his letters, copies of his letters, like, and post-it notes on all of the books. And this is going to be in chapter 3, and that's going to be in chapter 5. I mean, like, it was years in the making before I even came to the subject. He had been working on this for many years.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I really hope we can get him on.
Yeah.
Even if it's something short. Anybody else?
In the optimism and the careful choosing of words section.
Oh yeah.
Well, first off, I like that whole section overall, because that's like, I feel like I'm also the type of person where it's very important about like specific words and everything. Specifically when he mentioned about instead of saying house of the sick, a house of the healing. I really like that. And just that whole section I thought was really interesting.
Totally.
How he,
I noticed Selena said she had a due date earlier in this thing, and I'm like, oh, she read the chapter.
I changed it when I read that. I changed all my
awesome.
deadlines to due dates.
I started doing that too this week.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I till this day I can't say the word deadline. I can't say it when it comes to like a work thing.
Yeah, I'm looking at. I mean, it's this positive psychology. You want to say something?
I'm just saying, like, interesting enough, like here in South Africa, no one really says deadline as such. It is just due date. So, but yeah, no, definitely words. That was saying that. I don't know.
People
like,
are on a much higher level in South Africa.
No, we're not. Yeah. But on that, what's just great cool about words is just how, like, well, a lot of people forget is that hate speech usually turns to actions, which usually, so what your words may not have an effect now, it influences people. So to have a positive words will influence people to be more positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, apparently he was the first person to use the word special needs instead of the R word, which was interesting because I feel like even when we were little, people were still using that like pretty normally.
Yeah, that quote, I don't speak about people, I speak about opinions, was really hit home for me. It's really powerful.
Because yeah, I mean the idea of like lashon hara, like speaking bad about people, is really hard, and that kind of opened it up for me too. Of like, oh, like, so if you can focus on the words that they're saying, their opinions, and not really like them, then it becomes a different conversation.
Yeah, attack the idea, not the people.
Totally. Yeah, if today's politics could only just read that chapter, and you know, I'm guilty of it because I get really hated. Mayor knows. I'm not going to give away what side I am on, but I'm on the side of humanity.
I literally wrote I like write some notes, and I wrote like in that area would be useful in US politics.
Totally right. It's becoming so personal. It's no longer about policy, and it's about like the character of the human being. And
right. Right. Or like when you put in like the social media terms of like the fact that people have to write on their bio, like a retweet is not an endorsement, because like that means that like, oh, if I retweet something, then you think that now I endorse everything that person has said. No, I actually maybe just like this one thing that they said. But now you're painted with this brush and there's no communication. Everyone's behind a screen. I mean, I would love to hear the Rebbe's opinion on like social media.
Well, you couldn't. He'd probably be canceled.
Could you imagine?
Or, I mean, he would obviously be attempted. He wouldn't be canceled by our community, but definitely yeah.
I mean, obviously, they've alluded to different parts where people disagree with him and they tried to cancel him in the 80s or 90s terms.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. People disagreed with him about who a Jew was. or his opinion about Israeli policy. You know, he believed that they never should have given the Sinai back, which is like, I think a lot of people on both sides agree that that was the right move, but I don't want to turn this into Israeli politics. Although I'm sure there's going to be a full chapter on it.
We could have used some of that oil, man.
Yeah.
Chapter 10 was my favorite. Anything worth doing is worth doing now.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good. Every story in that chapter.
Is there a quote that you like particularly?
Out of the stories,
Mm-hmm.
out of chapter 10. Well, I mean, I like sort of the spiritual immediacy that he brought to so many, the situations in this chapter that they brought up.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I felt I got actually kind of teary about was the one about the I think he was a baker who didn't wrap tefillin for a really long time, I guess, because he, it was contradictory to his schedule, his work schedule. And when in the description where the rabbi told him, I will bring you tefillin in 6 weeks when I come back. Immediately when I read that, I thought, oh no, in my head is like what I thought. And then I kept reading and then, learned that, Rebbe told him like exactly what spiritually was at stake there, and he redirected him. And so, and then at the end, when I read about how he started wrapping it, and in the description of why, just why he made that decision to tell him to immediately just postpone Shabbat with his family. And it was very powerful. And it didn't just, it spoke to me about like the importance of the practice, not as just a ritual. It's like not a blind, empty ritual, but that there's spiritual weight to it, and that's so much more important, right? And that his family will be there, and his family will practice, whether or not he's there. And that the idea of like bringing one person home and going out of his way was a really good story. I liked it.
Yeah, that definitely, I feel you on that. And in that same chapter, South Africa got a shout out with getting Hanukkah candles for the prisoners, for the Jewish prisoners, and how that was one to me that was just like, if I was in that rabbi's position where it's like, call the guy now, it's like 3 a.m. there, so. And he's like, even more, because it's 3 a.m, he's going to take you more seriously because you're calling him in the middle of the night. And then when he succeeds, he's like, okay, good, now do it for New York. And it's like, I don't know anyone in New York. Okay, I know someone that does. And it's like, there's no excuse. It's just like, it really just brings it down to like, I'm always trying to apply it to like what's personally happening and like to me, and like you try to apply it to these situations and say like, you realize like a lot of the excuses they're self-made and they're rationalizations, and for the most part, they make our days a little easier, and that's fine. But tachlis, as they say in Hebrew, and when it comes down to it, and the things that you want to do and the things that you want to get done, everyone's had that moment where it's like, no matter what, I'm getting this done. It's gonna happen today, and it's a nice feeling when that happens, So it's an amazing virtue.
Yeah, his ability to challenge people, to continue to challenge them, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
So that not only is he challenging them, but he challenges them in a way where the people being challenged continue to challenge themselves. And it's a constant meeting of the minds, a constant sort of like a psychological struggle that perpetuates growth.
Yeah, in this part 3, they talked about how leader is somebody that creates leaders. And so all this is examples of how he was doing that.
It's like Simon Sinek, no one wants to be managed, you want to be led. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I was going to say, even then, by challenging you, it forces you to become more of a leader in yourself. Because he didn't, as it said, that he didn't care about having all these followers. He more created leaders within the movement. And you can see that now. Look at Chabad today. It survived because he created so many leaders within the community. It didn't need one big figure anymore.
Right. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs has that quote, who we're about to get to his 1 year anniversary of his yahrzeit, of his passing. He used to be the chief rabbi of England. Amazing guy. If somebody doesn't know, is not familiar with Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, unbelievable rabbi that we lost last year. And he has that quote there at the beginning of that chapter where he says that a good leader creates followers, a great leader creates leaders. And Rabbi Jonathan Sachs used to always attribute so much of his leadership and his growth to the Rebbe. When he visited him at a young age, he was just starting at Cambridge. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs was studying at Cambridge. He was religious, but he wasn't a rabbi yet, and he was going into philosophy. And the Rebbe basically challenged him to bring Judaism to the campus. And he had come there for personal, like a personal consultation, and it turned into like, now you have a goal, you have a challenge to go back and like change the dynamic on your campus and bring Judaism to the Jews on your. He asked him, how many Jews are there on your campus, I think, and how many observant Jews are there on your campus. He started asking him questions about like his campus, and he's like, wait, I came here for me. And the Rebbe was like, this is for you, don't worry about it, like this is a part of the plan. And he had another quote about him, but I'm forgetting it right now. Just last week, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, so 11 months after a person passes away, you reveal the tombstone in Judaism. So just last week actually was the day that his tomb was, his levaya, I think it's called, it was revealed. So if anyone's in London or near London, I highly recommend visiting it and praying there, leaving a rock. Does anybody have anything else to add? I do have one final thing to close it up. Okay, so it is Rosh Hashanah tomorrow night. Tonight is the last night of the year, and we wanted to sort of use this section of the book to challenge ourselves and inspire ourselves to take on something into the new year that I think everybody can grow from. And so there's 7 virtues, right? There were 7 chapters in this part, and we wanted to challenge everyone here, if you're listening, if you're watching after the fact, obviously everyone in the call, and we can share what the 7 virtues are if you don't have the book. But we wanted to challenge everyone to take 4 of the virtues, 3 or 4, and use these, try to focus on these in the upcoming month of Tishrei, the month where we have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, to really try to perfect and try to work on 3 or 4 of these, whether it be loving others, doing things now, anything worth doing is worth doing now, choosing the right words, whichever one it is, try to really like work on it and be conscious of it. And if you need to like write it down and put some post-its on your mirror, if you need to create a reminder on your phone, whatever it is, try to work on those virtues. And then once the month ends, see where you're at. Maybe we'll talk about it at the end of the month, and take on the rest of the virtues, and slowly but surely try to incorporate. I know that there's some that I can work on, and so it's something that usually in this time of year and Tishrei, and this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to do a personal audit of ourselves and our interactions with people and our relationship with God. And this is when somebody says like, what's a Jewish value? what am I looking for when I want to get, when you want to like get married and start a family, like these are the things, like these 7 virtues are at the core. And I think that it could be really cool. And if we get something, it'll be this. What does everyone say?
Oh, we're gonna now say the thing.
No, it's personal. No, God forbid. You do not have to share it. If you want to share, you can, but
Well, I'm a big believer in accountability. I feel like the Rebbe would be like, you're not leaving this room until you tell me what you're gonna improve.
Okay, fine. All right. So
The 7 virtues, are they identified by chapter?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the chapter titles, that's how they
Right. So each chapter title was a virtue. So fine, I'll go first. That's good.
It makes it a little more interesting.
That's good. So I'm gonna let me go to the table of contents. I'll do the careful choosing words. I definitely I think for me it's less like positive words and more like just cursing. I think that would, like, I feel like the Rebbe never cursed, and that was part of like careful choosing words.
Yeah.
And those word shifts, positive words. So I'm gonna do careful choosing words. Anything worth doing is worth doing now. I'm also tired. So what? So just a better work ethic. And Lashon Hara, which actually was one of my things last year. So being able to agree to disagree and not talk bad about people.
Mayor,
So,
come on, choose wisely.
I did. You're gonna be the biggest person accountable, Isaac. So if anybody else wants to share, they can share. I don't want to put anyone on the spot.
Well, I think the 2 that really stick out to me definitely are choosing your words properly, especially when talking about others. Like, I think it's very easy for us to, once we disagree with one thing, we start attacking a whole person. And it was like to understand more, a person is a person.
Mm-hmm.
Rather more, they attack the ideas, not the person. That I think something I can learn. And also I'm also tired. So what? Like with the last 2 years of online university and stuff, it's hard, and like you lose motivation easily. But I think it's an important lesson that, so what? Get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
So thing I think in this new year, I want to try, work harder, I guess.
Love it. You got this.
Awesome.
No, I don't. I've got a test the day after Yom Kippur.
Isaac?
Anything worth doing is worth doing now. Absolutely. And the second one is anything worth doing is worth doing now. So that goes double for me in all facets of my life, both public and private.
Cool. All right. So thank you for joining us, everyone.
And thank you, Jake, for joining us.
Wait, no, of course. Wait, did the women on the call want to share the things or no?
Do our opinions matter or
No,
I was like, maybe we shouldn't.
Share one.
Yeah, I didn't get to share mine either.
Oh, okay.
Unless we have a hard timeline.
No, there's no hard out.
And then I want Isaac to call me in like a couple of months and follow up and see if I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's yours?
Well, let's see the
ladies. Share one.
it's hard to pick one, but maybe creating fearlessness, creating leaders, because I think I'm a good leader, but I tend to ask a lot of other people for their opinions first rather than going for my own opinion. So probably that one.
Cool.
That's a really good one. I remember when I read that chapter thinking like, I do that all the time. Like I ask other people what to do, but like I should first, the Rebbe had that one should first consult with himself.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a really good one. What did Selena, right?
Yeah. Well, I can already tell you that I've printed out anything worth doing is worth doing now, and I have put it in my bathroom next to my mirror. So I'm just gonna say that one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's super important. It's this whole book has already been helping me with kind of like my personal research in my master's program. And so it's just really been a reminder of like doing what God is calling me, to do. And
That's huge.
And then it is huge. And that he's so right. Like, why are you waiting? Why are you're mortal? So, and then I'm also tired. So what? Because I do wake up every morning kind of like, oh, I have to get myself out of bed yet another day. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to look at it like, this day is going to be hard and this is going to be work. I want to look at it as an opportunity, and obviously choosing my words more carefully. I think I could always stand to do that.
Wow.
Beautiful.
What you said about waking up, I think that's like, I'm sure we've all struggled with that at some point in life. There's moments like now with my two kids, like one of them wakes up at like 4 a.m. crying, and it's my turn to help out with the kid. It's like, oh my God, my life, you know what I mean? Like you have those thoughts. But I feel like it's constant work. But I agree with you that it's super important. One thing that's helped me a lot is to say Modeh Ani in the mornings. So as soon as I wake up, no matter how little or how much I slept, I just thank you, God, for waking me up, for restoring my soul, and your faithfulness to me is great.
Yeah, that's what's on my wall back there, but I don't always remember to say it, because some days I just get up and I'm like, what happened? I don't know what I'm doing. Like, why is my day so?
It's really hard sometimes.
And I don't even have kids, or I don't even have a cat. I don't have an excuse. I don't have an excuse to wake up tired yet. So.
I feel like with kids, it's actually easier to get up early because it's like a really purpose-driven thing. Like, okay, there's like an infant crying, like let me help that. But when it's just for me,
I just wanted to add the translation of the Modeh Ani prayer, because it's connected to what you just said of like, oh, another day. And so it's literally saying, I offer thanks to you, ever living sovereign, so God, that you have restored my soul to me in mercy, and how great is your trust. So the idea of Modeh Ani is literally saying like, thank you for giving me another opportunity, which means that like my job here is not done, and that's why I'm back here. And it's like, that's if there's any alarm clock like Modeh Ani, it's or a kid maybe, it's probably, I don't know what does it better than that, where it's like you in your trust. It's amazing.
It's a beautiful prayer. There's a lot of wisdom in our tradition. I thank God all the time I'm a Jew. I guess mine would be, there's a moment in the book, I'm sad to say I don't exactly recall the page. It's been 8 years since I wrote it, edited it, but where he talks about the importance of focusing on a single moment and on putting your whole being in that moment and not being distracted by what you have to do next or what you just did. I'll have to find out.
I think that's one of the.
Is
it
the focus?
It's in the. I think it's the one of the. If not now, like.
If not now, when? It's in the focus.
I'm also tired. So what?
I'm also tired. So what?
Yeah.
He, and I just think in today's age of the cell phone, where we can literally have 100 different tasks on one device, it is so freaking hard for me to focus on the one thing.
Or it's anything worth doing is worth doing now. There's just a lot of overlap in those two ideas, because so I'm a huge believer. I think multitasking, like Mary was saying earlier, I think there's a lot of people who say multitasking is a myth. At least it's something that I definitely can't do. And I'd like to this year do one thing at a time, do it well, and move on to the next thing without being distracted by
what's next or what came before.
Cool.
Right on.
Right. So
On that note,
I want to looking at the schedule ahead because we do have the holidays and everything.
2 Sundays.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see what that Sunday is.
The 19th.
The
My
19th.
birthday.
Really? So we will sing happy birthday after the Zoom call. No, you don't have to jump in on your birthday. Well, no, technically, will it be? Because if it's midnight,
for me, it will be over.
oh, true, it'll be over, so it's no longer relevant. So
Okay.
no.
Actually, my Hebrew birthday on the 2nd of Tishrei.
Oh,
That's Tuesday, right? Or Wednesday?
Tuesday night, Wednesday, yeah.
Okay, so let's do the 19th. Part 4. Part 4. It's pretty short. Let's do part 4 and part 5.
sounds good.
Matthew's like, shit. Oh, you see, I'm already messing up. I already cursed.
That didn't last
This
very
podcast is
long.
explicit. We haven't. How many pages is that?
70.
That's
It's not
not bad.
bad because then I think part 6 after that is just as long as those two combined.
There we go. Challenge yourself, Matthew. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming, and thank you for listening. If you've been listening up until now, we will see you on our next episode or on social media. Send us a
Stay
DM. Join the club.
Shana Tova.
Natova.
Natova, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with everyone's goals. See you soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Bye.